What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Foxbody Junkie YouTube channel. I'm Brandon, and today you guys are going to watch me do the rear main seal, the clutch, flywheel, put the transmission on the motor, and then put it down into the car. So stay tuned and check it out. Alright, so here's how I remove the rear main seal on a Ford 302. First, you're going to get your drill bit. Boop. Then you're going to find your favorite screw right there. You're going to drill a hole somewhere about right here, and then you're going to screw your screw into there, and then you're going to take your clip removal tool and you're going to pry it out. See how it works. Alright. You don't want to go too far, just enough to make a little pilot hole. Take your favorite screw, go ahead. Ooh. You can make it in a hole. Might need to drill a bigger hole. Oh, we got it. Alright, y'all can kind of see that screw down in there. Let's see if we can get her out of here now. I wanted to put a washer or something on that. Almost there. And voila, she's out of there. You guys will see you've got protection on the back side from the seal itself on both ends. You just make sure you don't go too far down in there and get any contact with that area. You should be good to go. That's where I drill at, in between those. Always make sure you guys got your spring on the back side too. Sometimes they come off of there. I always use the Ford Racing seal personally. I feel that it seems to be a nice seal overall. I'm sure it's probably made by Velcro or something, but the Ford Racing one's like, I don't know, 13 bucks or something like that on Summit. So you go ahead, make sure you don't have anything on here. And you could even kind of put a little bit on the crankshaft itself. I know this seems counterproductive because we cleaned it, now we'll put the oil on it, but trust the process. Alright. So kind of start your way at the top, and you're going to want to flex that seal down and kind of feel it flex down over top of the crankshaft, and just kind of work your way around, ensuring you're not folding the seal over itself, and you'll get it to where it's about flush with that, about flush with the crank. And then what I do is I take my old rear main seal, turn it around this way, and take my hammer, start tapping it in. Kind of work your way around evenly.
get in a rush when you're doing this stuff, guys. It's not worth it. And then you gotta mess up your seal, and you gotta go to the parts store and buy one you don't want. So kind of get it to where you think it's good and just check it. Pretty good all the way around. I got a little bit on here. Alright, so we're going to go put our new pilot bearing in here. So we just put a little bit of RTV around the seal, just to make sure that if anything does try to seep out of there, that'll catch it. Cheap insurance, I like to call it. So you can do the same thing with the pilot bearing when you go to put it in. Put a little bit of oil around the inside of the crankshaft here. And then you can use a socket, or you can take your old pilot bearing that you took out of there, since you're not going to be using it, and use that. Here. This one's the same way. You want to make sure it's driving in pretty even. It's got a lip on it, so you can only go in so far. Pretty tight. Alright, that's all the way in. Like I said, it's got a ridge here, so you can only go in so far. It'll stop it. So you'll kind of hear the pitch change when you're hitting it too. So good to go. Put some grease on that and it's ready to get that input shaft. So alright, so we'll work on getting our flywheel bolts cleaned up, and we'll get our flywheel put on here and we'll pick up the camera then. Alright, so we had got our bell housing spacer plate put on here. Went ahead and put some more grease in the pilot bearing. Got our flywheel all cleaned up. This is just a cheapo from Rock Auto. And one thing before I put that up there. So on my bolts, I got the bolts all cleaned up. I go ahead and run some RTV on the outside of the threads here. Because your bolts are exposed to oil in the crankshaft, so you can actually leak oil out of the bolts whenever you put them in. So what I'll do is I'll put oil on the front half of that, and then I'll take some orange RT or orange thread lock. And this is basically, it's got the strength of red, but the removable of blue. So it works out pretty good. I've used that pretty much on all of this stuff in the past. So I'll go ahead and pop this flywheel up here. Oh. Now these flywheels only go on one way, meaning all the bolt holes will only line up in one direction. So just kind of spin it on there and keep spinning it until it lines up, and that's where we're at. Sometimes you get lucky and get it on the first try, other times not so much. So, and the flywheel should go on there nice and easy. You shouldn't have to fight it. You know, on the lip of the crankshaft there. I've had some where, like, I tried to use a used flywheel or something, and it didn't want to go on. So just be careful with stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with using used parts if they're in good shape. But I put it on, and yeah, no worky. So these ones are cheap though. This one was only $50 on Rock Auto. Like I said, I buy the Perfection Clutch brand. It typically works pretty well. Like I said, I've never had any issues out of them. I buy the Perfection Clutch kit as well. It's listed for a 93 Cobra R. Not sure what the difference is on their branding. It's probably the same as just a replacement 5-liter clutch or something, but so it seems to work out pretty well. So you don't want to forget this plate though. It'll mess up your spacing for your starter and all that stuff. So make sure you got that on there. We'll go ahead and get this torque down, and I guess I can videotape me doing that. So let me get all set up for that. You just watch. All right, we'll go ahead. Got all set up here, I think, and got them kind of loosely tied in there, I like to call it. And I got my pry bar set up here on my pressure plate dowels, and that'll kind of keep it steady. So I got it set at 50 right now. We're going to do a final torque of 80. Go ahead and clean our pressure plate or our flywheel back up one last time with some good old brake cleaner. Got the O'Reilly brand, but you guys can use whatever you want. It was 2 for $8, so can't go wrong with that. Cool. All right. Go get the pressure plate. All right, so went ahead and got the pressure plate all cleaned up. Make sure everything works together. Let me go ahead and open up my clutch disc here. So there's a lot of budget options for clutches out there. You can get a parts store replacement. You go on eBay and get like a Vallejo. Most importantly though, it should be stamped. This is flywheel side, so it's going to go on there like that. Most all clutch kits should come with an alignment tool. If not, then you probably bought kind of a super cheapo. Let's see here. Got that all on there. Top dowel pins, easy peasy. We did go ahead and put some orange Loctite on these bolts, so for those of you guys wondering. And typically I like to replace these bolts just because they are holding a big piece of metal right next to your feet, so probably a good idea to replace them. Same with the flywheel bolts, but I have reused them a time or two, so. Alright. Get this all set up here. Let's see there. Need to grab my other socket. Let me get ready. Alright. Just kind of run them in loosely with this thing. Don't go snugging them way down. Same deal, star pattern. That way it kind of draws the fingers in evenly. I kind of get close, I'll start doing it by hand. Make sure you're... Usually like to keep some pressure on that, so yeah, that worked out nice. Let's go put the trans on. Hopefully I don't have to redo all this, but we'll find out. Once I take the... I don't pull out, I'll have to bring the transmission over here and make that sliding good. Torque. Just kidding, y'all. We'll torque it. We'll torque it. It all ran down. Somewhat tight. And we'll torque it. I think the set is 13 to 24. We're just going to go ahead and put them at 20. Call it good. See if I can hold this steady. I don't think it's going to be torqued without holding it. Oh, well, that did. That's good. All right, go around. We're all torqued up there. All right, good to go. Go ahead and take our tool out of there. That should be good. Well, now we got to put our bell housing on there. Once we get the bell housing on, then we got to get the starter on, yada, yada, yada. Let's do it. All right, so we got our bell housing all cleaned up, front and back. You can kind of see it. Got the new pivot stud put in there. Put some grease on it. That should be ready to go. Sometimes I need a little persuasion. All right. You gotta be careful though, because sometimes these bell housings will actually hit on the flywheel. We'll go ahead and we'll tighten this one down, but I need to check and make sure. I'm just going to put a couple bolts in there. I need to check and make sure that that's not what is happening. So if so, we're going to have to do some work to the bell housing. With that, we'll go ahead and rotate the crankshaft over, make sure all that spins good, and we'll come back. All right, we are good in that department. Everything rotated over fine. Probably just some paint or something on the dowel pins. Sometimes they go on a little harder than others. So it's important not to tighten a bell housing down like that, though, if you have a transmission attached to it, because you can mess up the clutch and all of that. So don't ever do that. But yeah. I'm gonna torque mine to 60. You guys can do whatever you want to do. That's just what I'm gonna do. Alright. That's on there. Now what I need to do is actually set up my throwout bearing. Get that put on there. Clutch kit came with a new throwout bearing as well. I'm going to go grab my clutch fork. Alright, so we got a clutch fork here. Pretty nice piece. If you order the Ford Racing clutch cable, like the stock style clutch cable, it actually comes with a new clutch fork. I know a lot of you guys probably want to run an adjustable cable, but that is an option if you're looking for that. So I always put a little bit of grease on those two and those two in there, and then I'll load some more up on where the pivot ball is, because you don't want that stuff going dry. You also don't want too much grease in there to the point where you've got issues with it getting all over your clutch. So be mindful of that. Like I said, our new throwout bearing came in our clutch kit, so I'm just going to put a little bit of grease, just a very, very, very small amount, kind of where it touches on the fingers of the clutch. And then it's actually got some grease already where it goes over the input shaft bearing retainer, but put a little bit more on there. Yeah. And then you're going to want to slide your bearing retainer on over top of those two legs there. And then slide it through your little hole here. Look up in here. It's very important to make sure your little fingers on the end go on your pivot stud correctly. Sometimes the bottom one, when you try to push it up on there, will actually fall off of that. So just be mindful of that. Aside from that though, we are more or less ready for our transmission. We're going to be moving on to getting our starter done. Actually, we're going to go in and eat a sandwich, and then we're going to come out and do the starter. Once the starter's on, this baby is ready to go in the car. So, pretty exciting stuff. So this transmission is one that I've had gone through. It came out of a 92 at the junkyard. One of my junkyards a couple years ago. And good and tight. Torqued. 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 Anyway, like I was saying, this transmission came out of a junkyard car, and it was kind of hard to get in and out of gear, so I had it gone through by a local guy, and we put billet shift keys in it, cluster support, new input shaft, replaced some of the synchros that were in pretty rough shape. So this should be a pretty decent transmission, I'm hoping. So obviously you never know, but he gave it a good bill of health, so hopefully it works out pretty good for us. So let's go ahead and go make us a sandwich. We'll come back out and do the starter. All right, so we went ahead and got our starter installed down there, as you can see. Yeah, I was hoping I could get it snaked past either this tube or down up underneath the bottom, but that wasn't going to happen, so I had to take this header back off, but not too big of a deal. Came off in about 5 minutes. Now, would have been a lot harder in the car. I know some of you guys are probably thinking, wow, he's going to try to install this engine with the headers on it, and yep, I'm going to try. So it's going to be tight. I'm going to go ahead and put some blankets down on everything, and my 82 coupe had these same headers, and that one went in with the headers on, so I'm hoping this one goes the same way. But as you guys can kind of see, this is what it looks like. I know I didn't really touch much on getting all of the rest of the accessories on here, like the AC compressor and the power steering pump, but you can kind of see how all of that turned out now. Looks really good. Went ahead and took my time. This is just the factory finish on here. I didn't paint any of this stuff. It's just cleaned up as good as I could get it. But yeah, so I'm pretty happy with how everything turned out on that. You know, painted all the pulleys and everything like that. So yeah, pretty happy with that. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead, push this car up here, and we'll try to snake that thing down in there. Let's get it.
All right, so y'all just saw the engine go in. Went in pretty good. Did have to do some clearancing on the headers a little bit. Pretty tight next to the K-member. I probably still am going to have to get in there and try to make some more clearance best I can. But other than that, I kind of knew that was going to be a problem. I've ran these headers in the past, and they're really tight on the passenger side next to the K-member. Even with a tubular K-member, at least with this one, it's pretty tight over there. The second thing I had to do was modify the steering shaft. Not really modify it. I just had to take some material off of it. Let me show you guys that now. So this is what I mean by I had to modify it a little bit. You can kind of see I just went around that second U-joint piece there and just kind of beveled the edge. That way it would slide in a little bit easier in between the headers. I didn't take any material off the top, and I made sure to stay away from the actual swivel part of it, and should be perfectly fine. So the stock steering shaft will work. I already slid it up in the headers to make sure. Let me show you guys what it looks like in here now, and you can let me know what you think. So plenty of clearance, you know, on the shock towers and all that stuff. I typically like to always install my engines with the transmission. I hate fighting with transmissions underneath the car. It's just a pain in the ass. So I always try to install everything with the headers on it, at least Foxbody cars. You can see there is plenty of clearance down there for the headers. On this side, the passenger side, is very tight. So let's see if you guys can see. I did clearance a little bit on that forward tube, but it still needs a little bit more. The back one's kind of resting on there also, but it's a lot better than it was. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at with this thing. So engine's in, transmission's in, and the transmission cross member, I had to modify that also. I'll kind of go into what I had to do to make that work. But what do you guys think about this? Do you think it looks pretty good? Would you have done something differently? I'm a little on the fence about the alternator bracket. It's made by Speed Doctor Engineering. It fits really, really nice. There's no issues with the bracket at all. It's just an aesthetic thing for me right now. Maybe once everything's kind of installed and you know, I get the air cleaner and all that stuff put on and all the lines ran, maybe it'll kind of look a little bit better. But for right now, I think it looks a little out of place with the AC kind of being so high up here. However, I think everything else considering turned out really nice. Everything's clean. We'll see. Hopefully it stays clean. Hopefully I did a good job with all the gaskets and all that and nothing leaks. So we'll find out whenever I get it put on. I did have to modify the dipstick tube a little bit. Whenever you run headers, you always got to kind of trim up the mounting bracket on the bottom to kind of fit through the bolt and bend this out of the way. These are not the valve covers that are staying on here. I'm gonna do a set of painted Ford Motorsport valve covers. I always put a junk set of valve covers on when I'm putting something in the car, just to make sure that I don't mess those up, because I have the chains and all that routed. If you guys are curious where I mounted everything, I run a load leveler with a chain through the front tube and the back tube on the other side, and I secure it with a lug nut or a lug stud with a nut on it. And you know, I've been doing that way for a while, and I haven't had any problems. So everything, like I said, is pretty good. I'm fairly happy with how it turned out. Still lots of stuff to do. Obviously we need to get the, you know, all the radiator components and the AC lines, and I got to get the battery stuff routed. I'm still up in the air if I want to do a new battery tray and just put the battery in the factory location, or if I want to do a relocation to the trunk. I think it'd look pretty cool with just the air cleaner there and then the two tubes and then nothing here on each fender apron. So let me know what you guys think about that idea. I'm unsure, but for right now, let me go ahead and I'll jump under the car and kind of show you guys what I had to do with the transmission mount and how I had to modify that to make it work. All right, I apologize. These angles are probably going to be pretty bad, but on a 79 to 81 car, the mount itself where the cross member goes into place is
dimensionally smaller. I think it's like 2 3/4 inches. So what I did was these tubes are actually welded into your cross member. I cut the tack welds off of them, and then I cut the tubes themselves down along with the metal sleeve that goes into these bushings, slid the tube back in there, and then just threw a couple tacks on them like they do from the factory. So this is a used cross member, but everything seems to fit up okay. I did have to kind of slot the transmission mount over a little bit, so I'm not sure if that's going to present any issues. I don't really foresee it, but you never know. That is also a used like transmission mount off of a later model car for an AOD, but it's in really good shape, so because it was off of an AOD. But yeah, so we'll do the same thing with that one. But that's a factory, you know, 86 to 93 double hump cross member. So put in a 79 chassis. Obviously I need to go up under the floorboards and clean up all of this dirt and grime and all of that, and that'll happen when I go to fab up an exhaust, because you'll see we're gonna have to do something with a mid pipe here. One thing I'll note is the fitment on the driver's side header is really kind of close to that floor pan there. We'll see how that goes. I'm gonna have to do a pretty tight radius to kind of land it in there. I know it doesn't quite look like it from this angle, but it'll have to do a pretty tight curve. This one I can pretty much come straight out with. It's pretty much staring me right in the face. So other than that though, good clearance up on the top. I still need to trim the shifter hole opening for the shifter and do all of that, but like I said, figured I'd jump under here, show you guys what you have to do to modify this cross member. You can also do this if you're doing like a automatic to T5 conversion. You can do the same thing, because the automatic cars are welded like way far back on the cross member. You can cut the welds and move that tube around and center it basically wherever you need it, and then weld it back together. So this one was easy because it's literally the length of the tube is the width basically of the cross member itself once you put the bushings in. So if that makes sense, hopefully. Sorry for my rambling, but yeah, so that's pretty much it for the you know, basically completing the long block on this thing, getting all the headers, the trans, the clutch, all that stuff installed. You guys kind of saw all of that, and hopefully it was worth the watch. I know it's probably a super long one, so I apologize about that. If you're still here at the end of the video, thank you. Drop a like, leave a comment, maybe subscribe if you want to. We're getting pretty close to that 1,000 subscriber mark, which is really cool. I appreciate everybody that's joined along this journey so far. And yeah, hopefully we'll just get better from here and have the ability to do, you know, more cars in the future, more budget builds, maybe some more expensive builds. I've got one sitting over here in the next to this car that's pretty pricey, so at least for me. But anyway, I appreciate y'all watching, and we'll see you in the next one.